Can people hear me? Most people are muted that aren't here. You can hear me? Okay, great.
Gotcha.
Thanks. Okay, so,
This is silly.
well, we still are expecting Jono. Okay, so this is good. We got this. Okay, so it is, so you good for minutes?
Yeah.
But so it's 6 o'clock or 6:01 or something. Should we call to order? Are we good? Okay, great. So let's call to order. All right, public comment period. Any of the members of the public would like to make a comment on something that's not, Justin, do you want to make a comment? Nothing? Hi, Jim. Thanks for coming. Great. So any additional items to add to the agenda?
No.
No? Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. Do I have any? No. Review and approve the minutes of the October 13th meeting. What do people think about those minutes?
I didn't read them. They looked good to me. Yeah, good.
Nancy says they look good to her.
I'll motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Kristen? Did
No,
you say?
I didn't hear a second.
Oh, I thought we said we didn't have to have a second on the motion for minutes anymore. But Randy made that rule as clerk like 2 years ago. But you can second it. Does someone want to second it? Nancy's going to second it just in case. All those in favor?
Aye.
Kristen, are you going to abstain, or do you want to approve?
No, I said aye.
All right, it's so zoomy. Okay, thanks. Great. There's some kind of like dance troupe or something that's stomping on our ceiling right now. Okay, so the minutes are approved. That's fantastic. Any correspondence? No correspondence. Okay, great. Old business. Conservation Commission membership. Oh, yay. Alexis McCarlow is joining us. That's fantastic.
Great.
Conservation Commission membership. We have 2 seats available for Bristol residents. I sent out a Front Porch Forum ad on November 3rd of 2022 and have not received any interest in that so far. So I will send out another 1 or 2 things like that on Front Porch Forum over the next month. And then if you know anyone that might be interested in joining, please spread the word. We're looking for 2 seats right now are vacant.
I think I saw your Front Porch Forum posting, and it was lengthy. I forgot what the beginning was. And only at the bottom did it say, we're seeking 2 more members, 2 more.
Oh, so the title is like, join the BCC. Okay, so make a better ad. Thank you for the criticism, constructive criticism. Snappier ad. Okay. Okay, I will send that out once or twice this month. Anyone else have anything to add about members and how we're going to get 2 more members?
Well, wasn't Caitlin Cusack interested? And then
I think not. I talked to her about it the other a little bit ago. It sounds like not at this time. Perpetually interested, but not right at this time.
okay.
Yeah, there's a few people we've had in the back burner that were interested, and we've had people that have come to meetings that we've scared off that never wanted to join either. So I don't know. We're following up with them.
So wasn't there a woman who came 2 months ago and she seemed interested? And
yeah, but as far as I know, she never talked to Valerie and hasn't come to a meeting or responded to an email.
Do you have her name? Could we write her?
I could follow up with emails and see what's happened there. Was that in July meeting?
If this is November.
This is November.
Could have been September. We were outdoors.
September was the joint meeting about wildlife, right?
Right. So yeah, July or August, because we were outside.
We canceled August.
So that was July.
So it was July. Okay, I'll look at the July minutes. Yep. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll keep thinking about that. We've had one seat vacant for some time. As you know, we newly have a second seat vacant, so it's worth. I think we've sort of thought, well, if someone shows up, we've got a seat. But now we may want to actively look to try to fill, since you have 2 seats. Might be nice. So something to think about. Start with your friends or colleagues. Let them know. Anyone else want to say anything about Conservation Commission membership? Okay, great. And then let's move on to updating wildlife maps. So we have joining us today, Dr. Mikhailo from Middlebury College, who I contacted about helping us with this project. So Alexis, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we can tell you a little bit about our project and some ideas we've had?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me to Zoom in. I'm a still fairly new professor at Middlebury. I'm in the biology department as well as environmental studies. So a lot of my work is focused on community engaged research. And my background is mostly in mammalogy, working with trapping and tracking various mammals around the world and doing things like DNA analysis to figure out what they're eating and how they're using the landscape, and also talking to people to see what they're interested in learning about these mammals that they live alongside. So I currently teach a mammalogy class with field methods. So we work with the Middlebury Land Area Trust to monitor different sections of the trail that goes around all of Middlebury. We do that with different camera trapping methods and writing down tracks and looking at scat. So at the end of that course, my students prepare reports for the trust to share their data. We've also worked to install beaver deceiver devices on our campus to facilitate human beaver coexistence. And in general, I'm just really interested in projects where my students can get to learn from different community members and bring all different types of knowledge together to better understand what mammals are doing in Vermont. I'm also a member of the Vermont Scientific Advisory Group for mammals as well.
Cool. So we were thinking about, thank you for that. So we're thinking about wildlife tracking and making new maps to help update the 2025 town report or town plan, right? So we have time, obviously, to think about this, and we've been trying to figure out how best to approach this project, which is we haven't updated those maps in 20 years. So we're trying to figure out the best way to do that. And so, yeah. Do people have questions for Alexis?
This is somewhat of a deviation from what we were driving at, but I got to know, what is a beaver deceiver?
That's a great question. So it was actually invented by a man from Vermont, Skip Lyle. And it's a device that tricks the beavers into putting the wood and sticks in the wrong place. So if you have an area where a culvert's getting dammed up by beavers, they actually know where to put the sticks based on the sound of running water. And so what you can do is build a device where the water intake is in a different area from the culvert grid. So they will get deceived into putting the sticks in the wrong place. So that's like the Beaver Deceiver TM version. There's also the state of Vermont's version that's called a beaver baffle. And so we've installed one on the storm drain pond on our campus, and we're working with this land area trust in Middlebury to currently mitigate some beaver dynamics in one of the other parks. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, Alexis is a professor at Middlebury College, but can often be found chasing animals late night with I don't know who from the States. Sorry, Alex, would you want to say something?
Oh, I was going to joke that we have a significant labor shortage in construction around here, and this beaver deceiver could be put to some use. I got a lot of places to have beavers put sticks, and I can't find any people to put them in.
So we were wondering, right now we had recently got a quote from someone with the Tracking Connection to think about ways in which they could help and have different services that could sort of help us on this large project. And I was sort of wondering if you thought that there was a role you could play, or if there were things that that you've done before. I think you said you worked with malt, right? And so, is there something we could do there where we could bring you and your students into this?
Yeah, so I really love the idea of having students be involved. And since Middlebury is not that far from Bristol, I think it's a very realistic thing for students to do. In fact, one of my mammals labs is actually working with the watershed center, monitoring the beavers there. We have a drone, and so we go out and look at the extent of, how they've been modifying the landscape. So I think this would work really well for me to have independent study students potentially do their undergrad research or even thesis projects on this. And what I think is really special is that I'm not just in the bio department, but also in environmental studies. And we place a really big emphasis on community engagement and citizen or community science. So part of my objective would be for some students to maybe work with interested community members to learn what knowledge or interests they have about these local mammals, and then incorporate that into the planning. So it's not just about, us going out there with certain scientific techniques, which we can totally do, but also then going into the community and asking, what are you interested in? What have you been noticing? And actually that is really valuable data that can go alongside the more traditional camera trapping and other types of studies. So we have community engaged courses. I could potentially build one of the courses around this, make it a semester theme where several groups of students work on this. Through the college, we also have funding for academic community partnerships. So I could potentially get funding through Middlebury to support this type of work and make sure that it would pay for the students' gas mileage, for example, to come out. So we have funding pots both for research as well as community engagement that we could look into to support students doing this type of work.
Right. Yeah, that was the academic outreach endowment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wait, I have this. Academic outreach endowment grants. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And no guarantees that we would get it, but I think
Of
we
course.
have,
Yeah.
would do the best we could to apply for that together. So, and we have, I think, anywhere from 20 to 40 camera traps currently in the department. So currently my students have a bunch of them deployed along the trail around Middlebury, and then I have some at the Watershed Center as part of a national camera trap survey that we participate in as a lab. So we could certainly use those cameras. And then there's also other things we can do, again, like tracking to make different occurrence models, or even if y'all are interested in genetic data, that's something we could potentially do too.
Wow. Sure. And in terms of deliverable for the town plan, that we could pass on to the, so the village could use this information. Do you have ideas about that at all?
Yeah, so I will also say that Middlebury has a great geography department, and we have a lot of students who are really great with GIS and geospatial skills. So I could potentially seek out some of those students to mentor. So I'd have some students doing field work to actually collect the camera data. Other students maybe, particularly chatting with residents to see what their knowledge is. And then all of that can be combined by students who have really awesome GIS skills. And I know there's some faculty here who are they teach a conservation planning class. So they're even more specialist in that area than I am. So I think we could find a way to bring together some maps, maybe make some interactive maps. Certainly, we also use iNaturalist a bunch around here. If y'all are familiar with that, the citizen science platform. So pulling data through that. My students made the Vermont Small Mammal Atlas with the Vermont Center for Eco Studies. We could build on that. So there's a bunch of ways we can use the scientific data and then couple it with citizen or community science, I think. And just tell some stories about mammals in addition to showing the actual data.
Is there a timeline on when these courses would take place?
A great question. So I normally teach mammalogy in the fall, but I have students working in the lab year round. So it would just, I think, really depend on when you needed particular types of data. I could recruit students from my mammalogy class to then work independently in the spring, for example. There's also funding through the college, I know, for internships and then research opportunities. So I could even have a summer student fully dedicated to this type of work. I usually also teach a community engaged class in the fall sometimes. So it really depends. I can be pretty flexible whether I put it into a course or whether it's like an independent study.
Is the idea that this would be in replacement of the Tracking Connections program we were talking about, or in conjunction, or do you have any thoughts on that?
That's up to you all. Yeah, I think for me, my main concern is what students can bring to it and what they can learn from it. And kind of my approach to these things is working with the community to figure out what's of interest and to kind of bring together not just our knowledge as mammalogists, but then again, what the community has to bring as well. So really making it community based.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Grab a chair.
We have interest from the town of New Haven, and I know that obviously critters don't obey town boundaries, but would that be too much if we were to expand our tracking to include the town of New Haven and the town of Bristol, or at least parts of each of those towns? Would that be too much for your students to take on, or would you prefer to be focused on one town? Or
I'll be honest, I just moved to Vermont 2 years ago, so I'm still figuring out the geographic scale of everything.
Yeah.
That said, I also think it depends, certainly if you're more interested in species, like particular species, versus if you're more interested in like a particular jurisdiction, or like, you know, if you're putting in a trail somewhere, you probably want to look at that particular area, versus if you're really interested in a few key species, maybe we're following those species across boundaries. So the way that I would typically approach these things is survey the community and see like what is needed, what do people want to learn. If you're doing something like a citizen science approach and everyone has a trail cam in their backyard, right, that makes it a more feasible thing than just having like one or two students going out and doing tracking.
yeah, great point. And I think we do want to engage citizens in this effort, and do some citizen science. So does someone have the list of the 6 key mammals we have talked about before? I know bear, moose,
Yes.
bobcat.
I have it.
Otter.
Otter,
Otter.
mink.
It's otter, moose, bear, fisher, mink, and bobcat.
And those are the ones
And then-
the Sophie from the Tracking Connection came with that list originally.
And then
Amos. Yeah.
Amos suggested that we include deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like no matter what, we'll have to hone in a little bit on some geographic, pinpoints. I mean, Bristol's a big town and with a tremendously diverse, terrain, and we got to pick out a few spots, even regardless of how finely tuned we're doing which critters we're interested in.
Yeah, I guess the starting point would be looking at the map that was created how long ago?
I think it's about 20 years ago.
20 years ago. And use that as the starting point. Are these wildlife crossings, are these road crossings, are these areas still intact, still being used by mammals, but then expanding it as needed?
Yeah. I feel like I don't even know where those maps came from. I don't even know who to ask, right? I just don't have expertise.
It was the Lewis Creek Association pulled those maps together from their citizen monitoring.
Okay.
They had worked with Sue Morse at keeping track back then.
Oh, nice. Okay, so gosh, I don't even know. It's like this project is just there's so much to this project, and it's just hard to even wrap around like, what are we doing and who's doing it and why are we doing it? And there's all these pieces.
Well, I think right now, given that we have a proposal with prices from Tracking Connection, and now we have Alexis telling us what she and her students can do, I feel as though maybe what we could be doing now or within the next month is how to incorporate both, or, I mean, I
Yeah.
would love to have students do this, because I think you're expanding the knowledge base, and it becomes an educational, it becomes an educational mission as well as a mapping mission and a citizen science mission.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of having Middlebury College students.
Yeah. I think I like the idea of it being a little like long term too. We have years to get this done. So we have time to wait for the cycle of students or for new courses, or we don't have to rush.
Right.
Right. Which is nice.
But then do we just completely?
I don't know. And I don't know if we need to go into executive session if we want to talk specifically about that quote or not. I don't know what the rules would be, or best practice, if we want to do that or not.
I just had one additional question. Would your students ever focus on just an individual property? Like, we have several town properties, like Sycamore Park and Memorial Park and so forth, where I can envision that it would be useful to have mammalian surveys done on those individual town properties, so that we can record that information in our town plans, our management plans. That might be a way to kind of limit the scope of effort and target some town properties. Or maybe that's a project for an undergrad thesis, for example. Is that the kind of scope that would constitute an undergrad thesis, do you think?
Yeah, I think like my primary approach is whatever you find useful is what we can design a student project around, because part of their learning is not just the science, but also to see like, how do you apply that in the real world, and how do you design a project that meets a need? So I think like your group's needs take primary concern. And yeah, given the time scale, it is nice that like multiple students can cycle through. It could even be like a particular internship that's offered like at the college, something like that. The other thing I would mention too is that UVM also has some great mammalogists. So I'd be happy to reach out and see if they have like a master's student or something. And that way there could be like multiple levels of, mentorship, like me, master student, undergrad. You could see who else would be involved. I could reach out to the mammal advisory group and see if anyone there would be interested. So
folks like Jed Murdoch, or
yeah, I mean,
Brittany
he's like,
Mosier, yeah.
I mentioned him to Carolyn earlier. And I was like, oh man, I know he has some great students. So it could just be a nice kind of like laboratory for students to learn these methods and learn within the context of engaged conservation, not just doing it for the science, but doing it in a way that's relevant to people and what they want to see.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Kristen, go for it. I was going to say, for a few years, pre-COVID, always it's the qualification, but we had a map that we put up during town hall meeting day for a few years in a row, and then we moved it to the library, and people could put push pins where they had seen animals in the last year, and it was really cool. It was a really nice thing for the community to think about animals and to get that going. And we could think, we could target town hall meeting day as another day to say like we could get something in place. And I know the library really got excited about that, and they did some things with kids with it and adults, and it was just found a permanent home there throughout the year, and so we made a new one, and we had that going for a few years before COVID, and that was really nice. It was casual, unofficial or anything, but it certainly showed there was interest with how many people were putting those pins with the different colors.
That's a great. I had not heard that. That's a great idea.
Richard Butte set it up. He had a big easel, and he got the map from Addison County Regional Planning Commission. We just did different colors of pinheads. It was really nice.
That's great.
Yeah. But it showed that people were excited about it.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just gonna say, the other thing I would suggest is we could have students lead like a bio blitz. So that's when everyone goes out for like a day or two, and we just like, find as much sightings of mammal tracks and scat as possible in an area. And then that way we're also, engaging with everyone, hearing what they, are interested in, what stories they have, and then training them so then they can go out in their backyard and do the same thing. So,
Alex, you had some ideas about bringing like hunters and game cams into this project. Could you maybe tell us about that idea?
There was a couple, the thing that I brought up last meeting that I don't know quite how to integrate into this, but is just as some sort of replication of a system that New York has going, where they have a archer's log that you get when you buy an archery tag in New York, which is really cool. It's like an opportunity to chart what you see, because it's a time when a lot of hunters are spending a lot of hours just sitting in tree stands and seeing a lot of different stuff, beyond deer. And I think it has, my understanding, at least my friends and myself got really into participating in that. And I think in general, it draws a lot of attention. It's just kind of fun. It's a thing people are interested in sharing. How many bobcats you see out of the tree stand. How to like work that into this, I don't quite know just at this moment, but I think there's certainly there's a great opportunity there for people to share their sightings. And I think people in general, trail camera pictures are, to find some way to, like, I think what we talked about last time was like a Facebook page or something that people could share trail camera sightings of critters that we're interested in. I think in general, hunters and everybody are pretty interested in sharing that kind of stuff. Non-deer things in particular, little cage,
Are these
but
submitted to towns? Or are
So-
they just private? Are the logs that archers keep, are they submitted to any
Yeah.
office?
yes, you get a hard copy pamphlet in New York, and then you're supposed to send it back in.
What about Vermont?
This is not done in Vermont that I've ever been a part of, aware of,
Okay.
but it's just an idea I got because New York does it in archery season.
Yep. Interesting.
Yeah, I would say one of my best field research students was an avid hunter in Vermont. And I think, again, that knowledge is really valuable, and having students learn to engage again with people from throughout the community and how to bring that data in would be really, really valuable. So however we could work that in, certainly the trail cams too. But even just, we do a lot of local ecological knowledge surveys where we go and talk to different like hunting or trapping groups and ask like, what are you seeing? What have you noticed about this animal over the past few years? So we could incorporate that.
Cool. I think that sounds amazing.
It does sound.
Any other thoughts or questions while we have Alexis here? Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering how we move forward and what we should do. I know what the next thing we're supposed to discuss under wildlife mapping is discuss the quote and think about next steps for funding. It seems as though Alexis would solve some of that funding issue, at least as a preliminary study. But I don't want to know what you're thinking. Yeah,
For
Nancy.
the funding, Alexis, would she be the one doing the grant, finding the grants and things, or would we, since it's through the college, how would that work, the funding?
I think I would write that with Alexis.
You two would, okay.
Right, since as she's the mammologist and I'm BCC,
Right.
and we are in the hallway every day anyway.
But since
I
it's
would
through the
help do
college,
that,
it's-
yeah.
Okay.
But of course, anyone else could help. But like, I would be happy to deal with
Right.
that if you wanted.
That's-
Unless you want to jump in. You've written your last grant.
Okay.
But that would be fine. Yeah, I would be happy to do that. Because these are small. They're not like real grants. Not like.
Right. 'cause-
And that's like what he said, like a 30-page omnibus
Right.
thing, you know.
It seems to me like what we kind of need to sort out next is really exactly what we want to know. We've got a bunch of good ways of gathering data and doing fun stuff with it figured out, but we don't have a really concrete set of priorities as far as the information we want to gather, and maybe putting together a short list of projects that make a lot of sense to us to start with would provide direction for the next steps.
That's a great idea. Other thoughts about that? Maybe we could start a Google Doc and we could put things on there and talk next meeting about priority lists, and we could think about what are our priorities and how can we accomplish those, and possibly with Alexis's help. Would that be good? Or there's also the other idea of there's, still the tracking connection port on the table, of course, which we still have a plan to talk about. Does that sound like a good step forward? I like that idea a lot, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you want to talk to Alexis some more? Should we talk about track connection in executive session because it's a quote, or should we just keep talking about it openly? I have no idea. Anyone thoughts on that?
Seems like
John,
it
Kristen,
should be
you guys know about
What
that
is
stuff.
executive session?
Executive session means you don't record it and people who aren't in the commission don't hear you, because then you can keep privacy for
So it's
like
like
money
just
issues
private.
and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
private. So I have to worry about, I think for like a money thing like that, where it's like, because we won't, like we were saying before, we don't want to say what the quote is in case we want to get a second quote, and then we don't want someone underbidding.
Yeah.
Track connection wouldn't be unfair
Yeah.
to them. Yeah.
I think we could have, though, a discussion about priorities for tasks that don't include any discussion of costs. And I know we did our homework in terms of reading the quote, and we could put forth some ideas or priorities for pondering over the next month, I guess.
Sounds great. Yeah. So anyone, let's do maybe like, we'll think maybe 5 or 10 minutes of ideas. We brainstorm. What are some of our top priorities? I've stressed a few times, I think a deliverable, like a map for the zoning commission for the town plan was important, I think. What other thoughts do people have? That's a very vague, that's a vague goal, but I keep thinking about that deliverable.
Would that map be similar to what's in there now, which is just defining corridors for some of these larger mammals, or would that map be something different?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I want it to be something that we can use that's actionable, because I remember the woman that came from Cornwall said that she spent the time, they did the work, and then she didn't feel they had that last bit to make it into something that really made a big change for the town or the way they approach things, right? So I want to make sure, if there's something we need to do.
Yeah, a lot of that was like dealing with land transferring and development, and how making sure that the information was properly verified so that it could be used at development hearing.
Yeah. They had, just for Alexis's benefit, they had a number of citizens collecting tracking data, but then what they were missing was the step of, as Zaley was just saying, that professional verification of those citizen observations. And so with that lacking, their development review board or others making decisions at the town level about developments didn't feel that data rose to the level of being something that they could take into consideration when they made decisions about development. So
Carolyn just pulled up the old, can you share that?
If I talk, it will show up, but I have to keep talking at it. That's the map.
Got it.
It's on my laptop, the town
I
laptop,
see.
so I can't share it right now. But that's like what we're dealing. That's pretty much it. If you want to look, it's on page 92 of the town plan, which we've sent out a few times.
So there's almost no detail in here.
Yeah, there's not.
Well, keep in mind that this was a map that originally was generated for the full Lewis Creek watershed, and Bristol is a very small portion of Lewis Creek watershed. So that's why.
And it's the early days of GIS mapping too. We have so many more tools now.
So let me tell you, those of you who can't see this map, what is on this map. They have some pretty discrete lines for bear corridors, different color line for bobcat corridors, not clear how those data were collected. Deer wintering areas is a hatched area. Yep.
Oh.
So a lot of the hogback, most of this has to do with Bristol Cliffs. And then major wildlife road crossings, of which there are 5 dots on the map. So I would love to see what the source of data were.
That's what I was saying. Maybe we talked to Lewis Creek Association. They have those too.
What I believe was happening was when the Lewis Creek Association received training from Sue Morse at keeping track, they identified major crossings, and then those volunteers monitored those crossings over 2 or 3 years, and that information is what made it to this map.
2 or 3 years. Wow, that's a lot of effort. That's amazing.
Right, but it's surprising to me that there are only 5 major wildlife crossings.
Well,
and what defines major and what defines wildlife? I mean, but there's probably in the caption to this
Yeah.
table.
And keep in mind, this is a group of volunteers spread out across the Lewis Creek watershed. So there was only the capacity to handle probably 5 crossings.
It says
at the time.
bobcat and bear corridors were identified in 2002 from field surveys conducted to evaluate potential road crossing sites and subsequent wildlife corridor areas, as well as information from hunters. And that's the only, and then we have other forest blocks and habitat connectors based on vegetation, but that's the only wildlife specific map we have in the town plan right now.
So I would guess another question that requires stepping back a bit is, what is the town going to do with this?
That's what I keep saying.
Is there any prioritizing of protected lands or speed limits on roads or signage on roads, or is this all just an exercise in ecology and nobody does anything with it?
Right.
So
Well, we
why
do
bother?
have all those things that were the actions that we're supposed to be doing for the town plan, right? So we have, what do we have here? Developing management plans, which we've been working on to minimize invasive species. Education outreach materials for landowners about rare, threatened, endangered species, and help develop management plans for these sites. So this would certainly help knowing where those are living in some ways. Work with adjacent towns, local groups, state agencies, and willing landowners to develop low environmental impact biking and hiking trails to promote natural areas. Evaluate opportunities to conserve land with high natural resource value, especially those adjacent to town-owned or already conserved properties, through the purchase of in-fee, simple, or funding of conservation easements. Develop individual management plans on town parks, which we are still working on, and consider river corridor conservation and protection measures to decrease flood erosion losses and increase flood resiliency, and discourage additional infrastructure in the river corridor. Those are all things that we have been told that we are supposed to help to implement the plan, and those are our actions for 2025. And I skipped like 3 of them that had nothing to do with this.
I wonder if it would be useful to talk to like the zoning commission and see if there's information that they would actually be interested in having themselves, because that would be a very, that'd be a really great place for this information to go if it, if we put together something that they would actually take into consideration. But it might be useful to know what they would pay attention to.
Right. I think in the back of my mind, I'm worried that we would spend, and Alexa's students would spend, and Alexis would spend a lot of time developing these maps and then when decisions need to be made, that wildlife doesn't matter. We already know that the biology of areas matters way less than any financial implications that.
But this would become, like, if it was in the town plan, it would become a public resource where anyone who wanted to use it as a means of creating an argument for something or as protecting something, they could then find it and have it. And, like when we were approached, this year with someone who had a qualm about a trail going in. And, this would be something that we could be like, here is your resource, rather than when we were like, oh no.
Right.
I agree
it's a huge public service.
I agree with Zaley.
Resource.
I agree with Zaley. I think that if we go on the assumption that it's not going to be really functional, it's not going to be utilized, we're going to have just development going willy-nilly. Even aside from Act 250, if we go ahead and we do the best job that we can, and we are the promoters of of this work, then it's incumbent upon us to really validate the importance of it. And I think in general, Vermont has got a lot more receptivity compared to a lot of other places. So I think, start the work now. I also think that, it could be done in phases. You could certainly involve beyond high school students and professors, elementary school teachers and students, aside from citizen science involvement, and really, to have some sort of a public rollout. I'm kind of making an analogy of some of my involvement with capital campaigns. You usually do about 60, maybe 70% of the fundraising before you go public. In this case, we might do a certain portion of the work to sort of lay the ground, the groundwork, and then have a chance to go ahead and roll it out to the public. If we were going to go that far, again, this could be years, but I think it's important work. And I see what Helen's saying in that there's, how do we know it's really worthwhile? How do we know it's going to be used properly? Are there development pressures which are just going to trump anyway? Well, I'd say, no, that's our purview, as Carolyn was kind of pointing out. We have that's one of the things, and we have resources now, and we have other towns, and there's a sort of a coalition that can help with this whole process. We're not out there on an island on our own. So I think, do it thoughtfully. Don't feel it's so overbearing, and try to take it on, and know that's going to take some time, and we're going to have to figure it out, because it's, in a way, just even having that map from 2002, somebody started the ball rolling there. I applaud that, and maybe we're building on that. So we're not starting at ground zero completely, but I don't know. That's my outlook. I think it can be very involved. If we want it to be, we can have it be rather in-house. I think the more people that you get involved, the greater chance that people are going to buy in and have a sense of ownership and want to help promote it along with us. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking of an example of what would be really, what would be great to do with this information right now. And I don't know how to make this happen, but the example, this is a place in Cornwall, but I've had there's a property over there that I've been bow hunting on a bunch this fall that just got sold to a couple from Brooklyn. And it's in the middle of a bunch of like 6-acre chunks. And it's the only one that doesn't have a yard through the whole 6 acres, basically. And it provides this like real brushy corridor along the bottom of this little drainage that everything in the county funnels through. And I don't think that those folks would necessarily have any idea whether or not that, is important to, whether they're thinking about that, when they're making decisions as to whether or not to like have a 5-acre yard or maybe leave 2.5 acres when they come to build their house next year. And for some way, if there's some way that we can like provide that sort of information and figure out a way to get it into people's hands, it doesn't mean they're going to do it. It doesn't mean that anybody's going to give a hoot, but some people will, and it will be, it may influence people's decisions and what they do with their property, and builders' decisions and how they develop properties. And if it works a little bit every now and again, I think it'd be time well spent,
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so so in terms of actionable steps, because we do have other things to talk about today. So what do we want to say about this? So we're going to maybe continue to think about those priorities, right? And then what else are we gonna do just to wrap up our wildlife conversation for today, since it's been a while? And I wanna make sure we're like having forward progress. Any thoughts? So priorities, of what we want to cover, and then what? Maybe we'll talk about those priorities at the next meeting, and then I'll talk to Alexis about that after our meeting, after our next November, well, it was November now, so after the December meeting, maybe I'll meet with Alexis and I'll talk about the priorities with her. Would that
With
be
the idea
good?
being, can her courses or her
Yeah.
students contribute to that database?
Yeah, would that be good if we have like a wish list we come up with as like a homework, and then we'll talk about it at the next meeting. We'll maybe, we'll have like a list. Maybe I can share my screen and we can talk about it, and we'll make a plan, and then I'll present that to Alexis the week or two after or something, and we'll see like what she thinks she can contribute. Would that be a good way to go about this for this timeline? Is that cool with you, Alexis? Does that make sense?
Yeah, again, my approach is, you guys tell me what is important to you, and then I can see how that fits with what resources we have in my lab and at the college. And I know students are just love being outside and love camera trapping, so that won't be the hard part. But just making sure that whatever you all need or are looking for, that we can match it to resources and expertise we have here or elsewhere in the state. Again, there's some great folks at UVM and folks on the mammal advisory group who I'm sure could have a lot to add. And I'll just note that from a personal perspective, I like the list of species you have, but I don't really hear that many small mammals. And so I work on a lot of like rodents and things like shrews, and those species are really helpful to keep track of too, but they're also really charismatic. Things like squirrels, if you're talking about elementary school kids, they could be involved in, that type of work. Like that could be their species that they focus on. So I would just encourage you to think about mammal species that are important ecologically, but also might be accessible to different groups in the community who can contribute in different ways.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that list was something that we had been presented to us as opposed to
Yes.
us. We didn't
Okay.
generate that list, so we could talk about that as well, as creating a priority list of things, and maybe that would be something. Yeah, we can think of that as one of the aspects, is like what species, right? Would be. Do you think that we need to have a list of species, or is it just sort of like we get what we get on the camera traps? Like, what's best practice there?
Yeah, ignore rabbits because they're not on our list.
Yeah, like I
if
don't
you see them on
know.
the camera, you just pretend like they didn't exist.
Yeah, so you can design your camera, like how you deploy your cameras, depending on what you're looking for. So we're part of a national program right now called Snapshot USA, where it's camera traps all across the US, active from September through like the end of this month. And our protocols through that are actually putting the cameras at knee height and making the settings so that we capture pretty much everything, because we're trying to get an unbiased sense of what's there. Whereas if I was doing something like you really wanted bobcats or you really wanted deer, I'd probably specifically go track to an area where I know a bobcat is and put the camera there. But there's some really great software online too that's really accessible called Wildlife Insights, that actually you upload the camera data to and you add student users and they can help you do the identifications online, and then the professor can go check them. And there's also this great citizen science platform called Zooniverse, where a lot of like National Park Service and other folks do this. They actually upload all their camera photos, like thousands of photos, to this platform, and then anyone can participate in identifying the photos. So that could be a way for the community to be involved in like helping to collect the data as well. And that's pretty much, it works well when you're aiming for a broad range of species. So.
Alexis, is there a best time of year to do those bio blitzes?
On the one hand, it's nice when it snows because you can see the tracks. On the other hand, like a bio blitz is fun any time of year.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
I have a question, Alexis. Are there projects that you know of or have overseen that are multi-year projects? I kind of see this as easily fitting that. And then, one group of students, graduates and they can kind of check back, and another group takes them on the mantle, and things kind of continue. And maybe there's a cycle of 3 years, and you chart, you have and average and means and so on in that?
Yeah, so I would say definitely we'd need multiple years. And I think it really works well having multiple students work on it, because then it's more opportunities for more students. They can see, oh, we did the data this way this time. Let's see if we can improve it. So certainly multi-year. I know like our active funded grants right now, I have one that's for 5 years. So we definitely can't complete everything within a year.
All right.
Okay, great. Well, is that everything we want to talk about right now? So we'll create a priority list for our discussion next month. We'll follow up with that afterwards, and then I think that's where we're at. Yeah. And I saw that for Alexis, the deadline for summer RAs is due in late February to apply.
Yeah.
I think it's the first week in March that's due. So we'd have to, if we were going to do that, I think that's like a timeline we should keep in mind, that we would need Alexis to have time to find a student, and we have to apply for that money in February if we want a summer student.
Mm-hmm. Unless
want
you
Alexis
have
to have
them
a summer
as
student.
an intern. So Middlebury also has a program through the community or internship center where they help students with unpaid internships. So they'll actually pay like student stipends. So that could be another chance. And I think that deadline's in April. And then I don't know, I think the academic endowment one, the community engagement, is more year round.
Yeah, that one's rolling. I have that
yeah,
here.
that's what I have to check.
But that one won't fund community service initiatives or unpaid internships. But I don't think we fall in that category. So
No, I don't think so. So I think it's just, we can, depending on, again, what you're all interested in, we can figure out how to make the opportunities fit.
And that one would be, it's a maximum award of $4,000. It ranges between $1,000 and $3,000. Applicants from both individuals and teams are considered. Teams may include Middlebury College faculty, staff, and or students, community partners, and other participants. So we might be competitive to get that and help pull some students in and some resources. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of opportunities. Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, that makes sense. I think we have a plan to go forward. Alexis, thank you so much for coming today.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for inviting me. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure Carolyn can share my email. So
cool. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, great. So now parks update. Did anyone say anything else? Are we good? Okay. Parks updates. Did you want to talk about parks?
Yes.
He's like, I've just been sitting here. All right.
I would say from our last meeting, from 10/17 to 10/21, I checked all the parks. We removed a lot of garbage to Sycamore Park. We took some to the dump. Actually, that same week, the porta potties actually left that week as well. Mm-hmm. The next week, the Boy Scouts did an amazing job on cleaning a lot of the parks. Memorial Park, they did an amazing job up there. Sycamore, actually, they did a great job there as well. And then we went back that Friday and we found trash bags, metal, a syringe.
Oh no!
And that was it. And then the week of 10/31 to 11/4, we found a lot of beer cans at Memorial Park. Mm-hmm. There was two trash bags full of stuff at Sycamore Park. And just this past week, this week right here leading up, we checked the parks. We found 2 bags of trash at Sycamore Park. And there was a campsite, like a little mini campsite. It was closed. It was a flashlight. I picked all the items up and everything like that, and I brought them down to the town dump. But I feel like Sycamore is becoming more of a dumping ground. Mm-hmm. If we can put something up there or something like that, that's how people.
Is it mostly in the parking lot?
It's the parking lot, and it's over into the left. If you to the left corner in the back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Where the Notch Brook comes in.
Yeah. And then if you walk up a little bit, when you first get in there, you walk up a little in the hill, little up in there, you'll see a little campsite where a person was, or they just drop stuff off.
Mm. There is no camping allowed there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So there was a tent?
It wasn't a tent. It was more like they had a little bag. It was a bag full of stuff. We found dog food in it. We found it was dog food. It was was a flashlight. It was a lamp. It was like a little canteen. It was a little thing for they can cook. It was like a little thing for they can cook over a fire and everything like that.
Huh.
So I know Alex put in those pack in, pack out signs, and he was really concerned about the trash at the parks as well. I think we haven't thought of wonderful solutions for that.
I honestly,
the fear is they've said if you put a trash can in there, we have to empty it. People will fill it with like household trash, and so we just keep going in circles on that. I don't have a good answer.
that's what I've been running into a lot. A lot of
Yeah.
this household trash. Like, I'll be honest with you, we actually looked at it because we had to sort it through the dump, and a lot of it's just household trash. We was trying to find a name or something on it to tell somebody to stop, but there was no name or nothing like that. It was,
Yeah.
I got one of the bags is full of baby diapers, so.
So I've talked to Sergeant Elmore, who maybe now has a new title. I don't know if he won the election or not. Maybe he's sheriff now, I'm not sure. But at the time, at least, and so he was helping us with that, you wanted to put up some cameras and see if we could catch people dumping illegally over by the Notch Brook, but up by where Notch Road becomes Upper and Lower Notch. There's like a little dump area over there. So he had helped try to put some cameras out there. I hadn't found much, but maybe he could be a resource, or maybe his staff at this point. I don't know. He may have a new job, so. But maybe that's someone that would be sympathetic and could help use some resources to shine a light on that.
I definitely think I'll give him a call next week.
Yeah, that'd be great. If it's becoming worse, we want to make sure, see what we can do about it.
And I would say another thing about Sycamore Park, the bench is actually rotting away where you sit down at. It could be a quick, easy fix. We don't need a whole new bench. We just need where the seat is of the bench. I think it can be like probably $40 change, just change out a little bit, put it back on there. And the paper where inside Sycamore is actually molding and everything like that. And it's coming off, it's going off. I know through the rec, we're gonna actually order some more of that paper in the next
that's
month.
great.
So we'll put that up as well.
That's great. Yeah, we'd be happy to help supply the things that go in there. I think we have some of those, or various people have made that have been up in there, so we can help us with that, totally. Great.
So that's all I had on that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Other thoughts or concerns or things you want to put comments about the parks? Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for doing that. It's a lot of work. And then, I think Michael Elmore was helpful in the past, so maybe he will be in this instance.
I promise I'll get up.
But that's all I know to say because we've had this as an ongoing issue. Yeah. And then the bench, I think.
You included a photograph.
Yeah.
It's on the
Where?
picnic bench.
Where'd you get a photograph from?
From you. You took a photo
Yeah, I
and
took
sent it to everyone.
Yeah,
That's a photo?
I sent it in an email that same week.
Yeah.
Oh,
As well as the
sorry.
kiosk.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, but in any case, the
I'm
bench.
human. Okay, the bench. Should we fix the bench? Should we do something with the bench?
We want
Is
to.
RAC going to?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know.
Okay.
We want to, but I'll talk to Meredith.
Okay, yeah, talk to Meredith and let us know.
Gotcha.
If it's $40, like we have a very small operating budget we might be able to use or something, or
Yeah, it's only, I honestly pick the bench up, we tap it out, whatever, put the new one on there, drill the holes with it, put it back on there. I think it'll be probably 20-minute job too.
Cool.
So,
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
no problem.
Okay, EDA stock fund, are we good to move on? EDA stock fund, continue discussion of fund uses, but I have information for
This is the
once.
first time we have something to talk about with this agenda item.
The balance of the EDA stock fund is $3,940.64. That's my information for you. This is a fund that was originally set up to help protect and help the birds of Bristol. We have received the ownership of the remainder of this fund with no strings attached, although we have said that we've hoped to use it in some way it could help birds. We're not bound by that. So, does anyone have any ideas of things they would like to do with that?
And for some
amount? Does
reason
that
in
help
my
the
mind, it's
conversation?
linked to Sycamore Park, but it really isn't.
No,
Okay.
it's just to Bristol. But there's a lot of work has gone in at Sycamore Park using that fund. So they put in the bird boxes with that fund, and they also put in the apple tree grove and the maintenance of the apple trees there. My recollection.
It is linked to the Sycamore Park.
Or you
It
think
is.
it is or was linked?
It
Oh, I
is
didn't know
linked
that.
to Sycamore Park, but I think you're correct that it could be loosely supportive of bird habitat, maybe.
Okay. So yeah, so most of the work there has been done. Isn't there something else though? Well, it's not important. Okay, cool. So EDA Stock Fund has just short of $4,000 in it, is the answer.
So supporting birds at Sycamore Park. We have a relatively new pollinator garden that I'm sure birds are eating seeds and
Eating her seeds that we wanted to plant.
I'm wondering if we could be planting shrubs that are attractive to birds. Anything with bird sides. I mean, I assume we should spend this. We shouldn't just sit on it and next year say
we just keep not knowing what to do with it and then not knowing the amount. So now we know the amount and we know the size of project we could pull off, right?
Is there like a birding group in
Like
Bristol?
Audubon Society or something we could talk to?
Yeah, to see if they have any, if we want to use it for birds. I don't know.
That'd be great.
See if there's a project there.
I don't know of a birding group.
I know I did an Audubon Society walk at the watershed once. So we may be able to talk to some local chapter and see if they
Otter Creek
have-
Audubon.
Otter Creek, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe
do
they would
walks.
have, maybe we could bring in someone and just ask their opinions
Yeah.
on
What
possible
thoughts?
ideas.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
And they can come to a meeting, or it could be just some emails if they had ideas, whatever you think is appropriate.
Interesting. Yep.
I had thought Randy Durant was a birder, but then he told me he just likes birds. He's not a bird expert. But I asked him about it once. He's like, "Oh no." He just
I know,
he's a casual fan.
Speaking of Caitlin Cusack, her and her husband have a sugar bush that's an Audubon. I don't know what goes into being an Audubon sugar bush, but
It's a bird. Yeah. I don't either. I should ask them. But they have a sign that says that their sugar bush is bird friendly or whatever. Yeah.
I wonder what makes a sugar bush non-bird friendly.
So yeah, maybe reaching out to them. Some people, you seem to know them. Would you like to ask them as well about $4,000 projects that could help birds?
Yeah.
Or several smaller projects or whatever that might be. We also want to think about the apples, if we want to use the money to maintain the apple trees, if that is indeed
I don't
helping
know. I
birds
think
or
Jono
not.
and I did such a
You
good
got it?
job.
They got it.
I think they're good. I don't think we need to spend money on them in the near future.
Sounds good.
What do you think, Jono? Your mic is off.
I was so busy this fall, I meant to get down there and just take a look and see if there was some apple production. Did anybody notice at all?
Go.
Huh.
Well, I don't know.
Birds.
It wasn't. I
late
know
now.
a lot of the wild trees. At least it was the off year, but those aren't wild, and you guys did prune them. So
Yeah, it's true. They would take a little time to bounce back, possibly, but
but pruning usually. I mean, because you guys mostly pruned the shoots or whatever they're called. The
Water spouts.
Water spouts.
and so that usually helps production, right?
It does, but we were a little aggressive just to start. You can approach it two different ways.
I was cutting the water spouts, and Jono came along with a chainsaw and was just cutting major parts of the trees. So they got a significant pruning.
It's good for them.
It is, and I think they're good for a couple years now.
And I think too, to think about with the apples, The apples themselves, I don't know. I don't know if the apples themselves are very helpful to birds.
No, they're too big.
They're too big, right? And so I think that's, we may think about partnering with Rec on this and thinking about, could they do an apple day and hand out apples or free apple picking
apples.
and just to get rid of the apples so they aren't on the ground and wasted if it's an opportunity for community engagement or something we could do.
The library
Something
like
about
a cider
birds.
press.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if if the apples aren't really, if the apple trees are good for birds, but the apples themselves aren't, is there an opportunity there for maybe having some event where we teach people about birds, but we pull them in with free apples or something? I don't know if there's something there, but it feels like there's just this resource and the apples just fall on the ground and rot.
Are there
unless people
any
pick 'em.
deer in Sycamore Park? Because the deer will eat
Gotta
it.
be plenty of deer through there.
Deer will eat the apples. Yeah.
Darn, I wish we had a wildlife survey.
I was having so long.
Wait, let me call Alexa.
Unfortunately, I think one of the things that would help birds is to not cut such a vast quantity of lawn.
Right.
To have some tall grass, some scraggly places so that there's habitat for nesting and foraging. But
then it just becomes knotweed, right?
Not necessarily. I guess it depends on where it is.
Right, that's my fear. Any place that isn't mowed eventually becomes knotweed at that spot. Like even that pollinator garden, I'm just waiting for it to become knotweed, right? Like that's my fear at Sycamore always. And so I don't know. I agree. We need more of like a shrub scrub habitat for birds.
Or even just tall grass.
Yeah.
But it's cut so much.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we could think about leaving like strips, but then is that at odds with the recreational use of the space? And I just worry about that knotweed so much.
It does raise the question that there is so much mowed lawn at Sycamore, and how much of that area really does see recreational use? How many frisbees are being flung in all those different corners and pockets? It's
depends if there's,
I guess if you put a disc golf course there, there would be more, but
which
constituted, do we need to mow all that?
I would say not, but
I don't know. I worry about knotweed. The knotweed doesn't seem to be growing where we're
But
moving.
it's an experiment that we could do over the course of 1 or 2 or 3 years and cut back. If knotweed invades, then you start mowing again. But even at the college, they're trying to mow less and less and less.
Yeah.
For both using less fuel, emitting less carbon. And then there's some habitat for some animals to live. And monoculture of grass is just a monoculture that's not interesting to anyone except fast-running children and dogs. Not that I have anything against children and dogs, but if we're trying to promote habitat, lawn is the absolute wrong way to go.
I agree. Is there anyone we could talk to about the knotweed issue, though? I have no idea. Right? We just try it. I would just hate to have it, knotweed comes in and we mow it and we can't kill it once it gets in there. Right?
So Carolyn, you're gonna keep mowing it for as long as.
Well, I've never talked to anyone about it. I don't know how it gets mowed. I don't know who mows it. I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about it.
Does anybody know that?
I know that they don't move sticks. So if you want less lawn mowed, put sticks in there, and they will not move them. They will mow around it, and there'll be more and more of these.
Well, I know there was a land way out to the right.
Yep.
Jono, did I go out there with you? Did we talk to this landowner? And
I don't think so.
he really loves to mow.
Meredith, wasn't it?
I did go out with Meredith.
The mowing is done by the town. It's contracted to a lawn maintenance outfit.
So any idea who we would talk to talk about rationale for mowing?
Valerie.
Boy, she knows everything, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Why don't I talk to Valerie and we'll just start a discussion. Okay.
Yeah, it would just be good to get some expertise in about how, like what birds need in this area, right?
So talking to people at Otter Creek
Yeah.
Audubon would be great.
Yeah.
So I know one of the places they walk regularly, I think monthly, if not more, is a park in Middlebury at the corner of Weybridge and Seymour, something. There's an Otter Creek Park.
Okay.
And it's,
You mean Wright Park?
no, it's closer
Otter
to
View
Camp.
Park?
Otter View Park.
With the one with the boardwalk. Have you been there? It's got this
Yes.
crazy boardwalk through cattails.
It's
so
so
long and
cool.
beautiful, and then it
I
ends
love
up at
it.
Otter Creek. Yeah, it's really cool.
And the field at the entrance to that is mowed
Yep.
maybe twice a year. So it has lots of
Yep.
milkweed. It's a great
I
habitat.
wonder what's happening under the solar panels. Are we mowing that? Is that all, like, could that be?
Which
The
solar
one
panels?
behind the high school, the big new installation.
Okay, you're switching gears here. So
Well, I'm
now
just
you're just
thinking
talking
now,
about mowing.
now there are places we don't need to mow, right? If that's gonna help birds, but then we're not using the Edic Stop Trust, we're
Right.
just stopping everyone
Right.
from mowing, so.
We're saving money.
Now we're just saving money, which we can reinvest.
Well, exact opposite of what we're supposed to do.
I mean, frankly, like, have you seen in the town report how much we spend to mow the graveyard? Like, that could be happening less, but
Yes. And I
that's.
just saw an article about some people who are trying to rewild cemeteries to make them more biologically diverse and less of a carbon sink.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great idea. But
Okay.
we're getting off.
Let's add a
topic.
new business item to talk about is
Mowing.
mowing. How's that? That'll be for next meeting. I'll add that to the agenda.
I'll talk to Valerie
F.
about, yeah.
Less mowing in town.
There is a no mow May
Mark.
benefit. Do people know that? No mow May, which is to benefit pollinators. So people to try to hold off on mowing through the month of May. So I think there's, that's getting to be, well, I would just say within the last year, something that people are paying attention to. And I also think when you mention Otterview Park, that has a trail around it. So you can still enjoy the
Exactly.
area
yeah.
because of the constantly mowed trail, but yet you don't have the frequent, week to 10-day constant mowing throughout the summer. So I think there are some birds, bobolinks, is it? I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Sure.
That usually larger fields that there's a program where they try to not have the first cutting of hay, so they can go and have their they can fledge and then farmers get paid for not taking that first cut of hay. So there's a lot of rationale for doing things. I don't know whether they all apply towards Sycamore or other areas, but things to consider. And I think Helen is right where, we have to start thinking about doing things differently, environmentally speaking, and the cost of fuel. So.
Yeah, I feel like what you said with the Otterview Park, right? It's like if it was mowed, it would just be a big field. But because there's the grass in the middle and that big, it was a wide, like a street almost of grass on the edges.
Yeah.
Then you go there and you do something. You go for a walk on the edge, and there's like occasional statues and things you can look at, like that you can tuck in, which would actually be a better use of some of that lawn. It would give you something to do at Sycamore, since we do seldom see people using the big lawn areas.
Okay.
Right? That's an interesting idea.
Yep.
We get some artists involved and tuck some statues and benches and things around there. It'd be fun. It's already such an interesting landscape. But we do have to talk about Meredith also thinking about that Frisbee thing, which she said she wanted to talk to us again in March. So, but again, we don't have to deal with this yet because nothing is getting mowed for some time.
Right. It gives us time to.
You can start to think about it. Yeah, it's a fun idea. Okay, it doesn't help us at the Edith stock fund though. This just saves money. It doesn't spend money. Right. So let's.
Are we looking to spend it all? Not all at one time, but or
it needs to get
over
spent.
the little bits.
Does it need to get spent?
Well, it's not getting any interest that to be, I mean, we get like no return on it, so it's not doing any good to just hold on to it. We don't have to spend it right now, but I think we should spend it eventually.
Well,
Unless
if
we
I
learn
remember correctly, is it
something.
George? He said, yes, the original inception was 4 birds, but he felt that when passing it on to us, yeah, birds is sort of the, the lineage, the legacy of what the funds have been used for. But I think he suggested we have some latitude. And so maybe sometimes with these grants that you have to leverage, right? It's a matching grant or something to that effect. So if we're going to do the wildlife corridors, I can't speak for Edith, and she's not here, obviously, but I think Edith would probably go along with the idea of using that for potentially a matching grant or in some other way to. So that's a pretty good sizable amount of money, almost $4,000.
Yeah.
So I would not be too quick to just say, we need to expend it. We need to be very thoughtful, and maybe that's something that, especially with some of these, with Kirsten's, reminding us to all take a look at that. What's the heading of that? The Wildlife Tracking Service estimate sheet and so on.
So it strikes me that when you just said that just now, we keep talking about wildlife meaning mammals, but does it? I mean, what about turkeys? Alex, can you help me out here? Like, they're birds too.
And I mean, like anything productive we do with the information we gain from this wildlife tracking project is going to benefit birds, whether or not they're the ones we were tracking or not. So I think there's a case to be made there for sure.
Yeah, but like other ground birds or something that are in these habitats as well, right?
Again, I have to say, I don't think that we are beholden to have it.
Yeah.
Be,
oh no. Yes.
So
I
mean, we have still some more bird boxes, if I'm not, bird houses rather, if I'm not mistaken. So, we could break out a portion of that to continue with some of that. But anyway, maybe we move on to other things and we return to that discussion, because again, it's a sizable chunk of money and it might facilitate. Yeah.
That's great. And, we have Conservation Reserve Fund that we help the select board manage. But this would be more of a, no strings sort of thing with the 4,000. And although we have, I think, said we would like it to be in the spirit of birds and the way she thought, realistically, it is just money we could use for what we deem we want to use it for. So
I like the idea of putting up bat boxes. They're flying. They look like birds, but bats need protected spaces for roosting, and they're pretty cool, and they can be educational. Put some.
Some more wood duck boxes at Bristol Pond. There used to be a bunch of them, and a lot of them have blown over. And
yeah. Cool. So let's think about this. Let's brainstorm our priority list for the wildlife maps. What we want there. Let's also do some brainstorming. Talk to people if you can, if they're in places, and we'll see. We'll keep this now that we know the number. Now we can start to maybe have more of a productive brainstorming activity next semester.
Okay.
Next meeting. Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Are we good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that brings us to letter E, policy on reporting minutes. I talked to Valerie with this. She says we are already going above and beyond what we need to do, and she sees no reason for change. She also gave me the correct information from the legislature about open meeting laws. And so this is the official statute. Minutes shall be taken of all meetings of public bodies. These minutes shall cover all topics and motions that arise in the meeting and give a true indication of the business of the meeting. Minutes shall include at least the following minimal information, which we already do this. All members of the public body present, all other active participants in the meeting, all motions, proposals, and resolutions made, offered, and considered, and what disposition is made of same, and the results of any votes with a record of the individual vote of each member if roll call is taken. So that's what she sent me. She said that we are doing a fine job as volunteers doing this, and she said there was other boards that were doing much less, and that she thought we were doing fine. But if someone would like to talk about that or change our practice, that's totally up for discussion. But this is the thing. And Zaylee told me to send you this red information here. I can do that from the Vermont State website. Thoughts on minutes?
Why is this even on the agenda? Was it raised that we didn't?
It was
We were doing
raised
it
by
in
a
a
member of the public that they wanted the minutes to be more in depth. And so
okay.
we wanted to address this,
Got it.
talked about it, and
It was relating to one particular item. It wasn't across the board. Our minutes should be more. It
Right.
was, they felt that a particular conversation, the sentiment hadn't fully been captured. So.
I recall
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
but it's at a minimum, this is what was needed at a minimum, and we already are going above that. So
Great.
We can leave that up to, if someone comes and has a strong opinion on something, we can ask how much of this they want reported. But ultimately, there's no need for a change. We are in full compliance with Vermont state law.
Mm-hmm.
Zaylee, do you have thoughts?
It sounds good. When we have visitors, yeah, we can ask. I think it's probably a nice practice to ask how much they want written down in the minutes. They are coming and speaking publicly. So, whatever they say can obviously go in the minutes, but
I think especially anytime NETV's here, we could also just make a little note. NETV recorded this. It's
Yeah, I
available.
think
And then it's covered because everything is in there, right?
yeah, I think that's
And Valerie said they don't currently, even with the select board, but she thought well, if you want to, you could put that in. So
yeah,
if you want to do that.
probably just makes it.
I just say that Zaylee does excellent minutes, and I don't
Yes.
see that there's any
Yes,
need
she
for improvement.
does.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I actually use that as an example. I was like, no, Zaylee's really good, but what if Jonna was taking the minutes? He takes notes on the back of an old envelope. Like, could you imagine the minutes then?
Well, if you want a
Much
condensed version,
Exactly. He's gonna get right to the point. All right, well, that is the end of the business that I have on the agenda.
Well, we have agenda item 8, events.
Oh, is there an event?
No, but I mean, it's
I'm
here,
sorry.
So.
Oh, no, I meant on that's all I have under old business.
Got it.
Okay, events?
I just had one quick question that refers back to the wildlife. Town of New Haven asked if we could share the quote that we received from Sophie, not necessarily for the costing, but really to understand what she laid out as options. And would the members have any problem with me forwarding that to the New Haven Conservation Commission?
Why?
I'd ask Sophie, I think.
Why? Yeah.
Direct them to ask Sophie rather than.
I would.
Yeah.
Or ask Sophie if you can send it along, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes good sense.
And then it could be the whole thing if she doesn't change anything for other organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question that goes back to my coming in late to the meeting, and I'm wondering if the tracking discussion of the quote on the tracking connection happened before, because
We didn't really talk about it.
Once Alexis started presenting what she and students could do, we sort of just put the tracking connection aside for
Okay,
that.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
she offered several comprehensive sounding free sounding ideas. And so I think
There was one option that
Free
cost a
thing.
lot of money. There was another option that sounded really good and didn't cost a lot of money.
But it's possible that, like, maybe some of the things that, Sophie can do, the students don't cover, and then we go
Yeah.
back to it.
True.
totally.
True.
Totally. I mean, some students are great and some students never quite come and don't deliver. And it's nice to know we have the option in our pocket to be like, okay, we got this. We can just cover this with Sophie, right?
So does Sophie need a quick response, or is she just kind of like always there? We then approach her and see what her timeline is if we need one thing, or
That's an interesting question.
get
Yeah.
on her list.
Yeah, I think just generally, we should get back to her with some idea of our timeline and considering her quote and things like that.
I agree,
Okay.
and I doubt that this is like other types of quotes that involve, materials and inflationary spikes and so on that are time sensitive, good for
Right.
30 days or something to that effect. However, I agree with Kristen that, we would want to try and either take it up in the next meeting and then get back to her, or at least say that we are trying to review it, and because of the conversation that was extended with the Middlebury College professor, Alexis, then we would be wise to just defer it a little bit to next meeting, maybe. That's up to everybody else. That's a guess.
Well, I was thinking we'd create the priority list of what we want, talk to Alexis. I can just do that without a whole meeting, I think. And then we can also look over the quote, see in what places we would want, what could Alexis and her students do? What could Sophie do? And then we get back to Sophie at that time. It's like, what, most things we wanted, we need you, or we would work with Alexis, or we could figure it out from there. I
So
think.
would it be
if that's
worth
okay, if
sending-
that's a professional timeline or not? I don't know if that's too slow, but government's slow, right? So maybe that's how it is. I don't know.
Would it be worth sending Alexis?
She has it
She
because Kristen forwarded it to everyone that had the agenda.
So getting her input on what Sophie does that's different than what Alexa and her
Yep.
students could do. You guys
Yep.
might consider hiring her to do A and
That's
B,
right, yep.
but I can do C through D.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be really helpful.
Well, I think that once we have this list, we'll know, like, what are things we want, and we can look at the quote, we can think about, other things we're thinking about in general, like with town plan, or with things we want with the parks and management plans. Let's think about all those things, get a priority list going, and then sort of see who can cover which pieces,
Yep.
right?
We say tabled until next month when we discuss this,
We discuss our
when we
priorities.
come back with.
Yeah, I
lists.
guess you can just count the quote as, is tabled. We discussed discussing the quote, but we didn't discuss the quote. Well, I think that's the best way to move forward to make something happen, right? But yeah, I think I think, academics, sometimes the cycle can be slow, but we are so ahead of this. If we want to do something for 2025.
The
we have time.
timing is
We have
perfect,
time,
really.
yeah. Just nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then even if we want to do a AVCC tiny grant, that's not until April 23 is the anticipated call for even another small grant. So that's nice too in terms of timeline. We have like a lot of time on this, which is great. Okay. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn? I have next meeting here is December 8th. Planning on Holly Hall with a Zoom option like today. But that could change if the world changes, as always. Everyone good? Do we want to make a motion, or anyone have anything else they want to say?
A motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. The motion is adjourned. Do you have the time?
The motion is
The
adjourned.
motion is adjourned. Yes. The motion carries.
7:30 on the button.
Right.